All right. Here we are. Here we are. Here we are. Welcome, 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 everyone. We're live. Yeah, welcome to our YouTube channel, everybody. Hello, hello. I'm gonna wait a minute as folks join us, as folks find us. Um, but in the meantime, how is everybody? If you'd like to share in the comment section, say hello. And what activism did you participate in this week? And what is happening in your neck of the woods? And where are you in terms of your location? And what are you looking forward to in this live stream now? So, okay. All right, we're going to get started. All right, welcome to another AAC Live educational program. In this live stream, we'll learn about the mission and current campaigns and initiatives that you can take part in, led by Animal Rights Initiative, and they are truly making an impact. So, before we start our program, my name is Michelle Granberg. I'm a mentor and board member with Animal Activism Collective. For those new to AAC, AAC was created to assist activists in reaching their goals and equip them with the tools, community, and resources they need to boldly participate in our global animal liberation movement. Founded in 2020, AAC offers a 3-month mentorship program which pairs experienced activists with aspiring activists. You can apply today to become a mentor or mentee through our website. Plus, we are more than a mentorship program. We offer free educational live streams and online trainings. We have a podcast called the Animal Liberation Hour. If you listen, please comment, I listen. And we host large-scale, in-person, collaborative activism events around the country. And as a reminder, our next in-person event, the Ohio Occurrence, in and around Cleveland, is August 29th through 31st, 2025. And we'll put the info for that in the comments. And so AAC is a support system and a resource designed to empower grassroots activism from A to Z. Yeah, so moving on to our program and our guests. Animal Rights Initiative, or ARI, is a 501c3 organization based in the US dedicated to conserving biodiversity and ending animal suffering through a multifaceted approach, combining government, community, and corporate outreach to achieve legislative protections and corporate policy changes. ARI focuses primarily on factory farms and breeding mills, but so much more. And as always, we will love to hear from you. We will take your questions. You're welcome to drop your questions in the comment section at any point, and we'll try to get to all of them. Please keep your comments kind and appropriate, and keep your questions on topic. I want to now give a warm welcome to Executive Director and Founder Amanda Fox and Carrie Espuga of ARI. Welcome, you guys.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much.
Yeah, it's so good to have you. There's so much to talk about. There's a lot going on, and there's a lot that people can get involved in and become even more active. There's a lot of areas where people are curious and have a lot of questions, and there's a lot of unknowns. So we're just going to educate everyone today. So thank you for your time. But I mean, Amanda and then Carrie, why don't you just introduce yourselves? And then Amanda, I know you wanted to share some important points to frame our conversation and talk a bit about what ARI, where it started, where it is, the structure and mission of ARI.
Sure. Well then, Carrie, why don't you go first, and then I'll talk about me and go right into it.
Okay. I've been working in animal rights for about 8 years, mostly with dog adoptions with Bridges to Safety Animal Rescue. And then I joined Amanda almost a year ago with Animal Rights Initiative. because that was my passion, saving animals, but I wanted to take it to the next level to impact more lives through legislation. So I've learned a ton. Amanda's the best, and we'll let her take it away.
Wow, thanks so much. So my name's Amanda Fox. I'm Executive Director of the Animal Rights Initiative, and we started our charity back in 2017. And I just kind of I'm really thankful for the opportunity to speak on this call because I think it will really help demystifying the entry point into political advocacy and really explain why I think this is so necessary for all of our campaigns. And so I just want to give a little bit of a background story about Animal Rights Initiative and how we just evolved through various forms and throughout overcoming obstacles landed on this as part. So, at first, probably like many people on this call, all we were doing was just video-based outreach, just one-on-one, talking to just people all the time. And we really wanted to expand on that because we were like, okay, well, so we really need to reach more people and we need to reach more businesses. And so we expanded those types of events to include like food giveaways, and we would do different demonstrations at stores. We would interrupt different types of animal events, right? So we started doing that, and then we realized that even wasn't enough. We weren't making enough an impact because even more animals were being killed every year. So we took it to the producer level. Actually, if you don't mind, I'll share screen on what I prepared something, so I feel like this is a really, really good time to show you guys to kind of explain what I'm talking about here. So we took it from consumer level advocacy up to producer level advocacy, right? We started targeting stores and manufacturers and designers. And we really did see a lot of impact on that. And, we have collaborated with a lot of people that are probably on this call, especially AAC, especially CAFT, on a lot of producer-based advocacy. And it's really successful, right? It's so good. But, there's more. We realize still more animals are being killed every single year, right? So we're like, we have to make it against the law to hurt animals. Otherwise, we're never going to be able to make a meaningful impact because people are using the law as a moral compass for their actions and what they can consume. And so no matter what, even if we do a good job of our advocacy towards consumers and they do believe us that animals are suffering, they're still marketed in other ways that allow them to be used or misled by industries that still have their participation in those industries. So as long as the government is allowing these things to happen, it's all going to be enabled. It's all multiple different parts of the pathways that we can make an impact here. And so by creating an impact for consumers and producers and the government, it creates a feedback loop of impact on each other. So once you seal the deal with the government, then you kind of create an impact on so many people at once, right? Like, if you think of doing consumer-based video outreach, I'm talking to one person at a time. But if I pass a bill in Washington State, I'm talking to like 7 million people at one time that found out about that bill. And now they have to identify with whatever change it is that we caused in that system, and so even if it does take a little while longer, the impact is really great. And so I really wanted to kind of emphasize for our movement that all of these efforts complement each other and create support for each other. And so we really, just have to kind of respect all different types of advocacy because they're creating momentum for each other. So it really is a waste of time or kind of distracting to the movement if we're trying to encourage people not to do different forms of advocacy. And I think, if we really take a look at the history of like law changes, even if we take a look at like the emancipation of slavery in the United States, that didn't just happen overnight. It wasn't just abolition overnight. Like it was a series of welfarist laws that impacted the system state by state until eventually rights were achieved, in what we call freedom today. And so I just think that if we look at it from an abolitionist approach, or we look at it from a welfarist approach, all those are really necessary to create the evidence that the animals that we're working to save have the capacity to suffer, have the capacity to deserve more. And so really my biggest message in all that is that it's just all necessary all at one time. And really, we should just be empowering each other instead of trying to get people not to do certain things. We can all do anything. The best thing that you can do is what you're willing to do.
Yeah, I think that emphasis on inclusivity and there's a place for everyone is part of what differentiates you in a good way and makes you stand out as an organization and the fact that you're just evolving as you go and willing to evolve, So I think that's wonderful. Carrie, did you want to add anything at this point?
I just wanted to reiterate because Amanda had spoken about the consumer. So even if at the grassroots level we're effective with consumers, it doesn't matter because they go to the grocery store and they see a happy cartoon cow, but so they think they're doing the right thing ethically by buying that happy cow milk, but it's horrific. And the one with the cartoon happy cow it's terrible and scored the worst for cruelty. So even if we convince the consumer in our outreach, it's so much more broad and more of an impact at the legislature level because it's beyond the consumer, just like Amanda had mentioned. I just wanted to reiterate that because consumers are misled every day, every day. Grass fed. I saw this one video with a tractor dumping cut grass on cows' heads. So that way the company can say grass fed. So it's just, and then when the consumer goes to the store and sees grass fed, they think happy cows in the pasture. So it's just beyond a consumerism point.
Yeah, exactly. And most of the time in the meat and dairy industry, actually, they're actually paid to do that. Like they take our tax dollars and pay to do that. Take our tax dollars and pay to remediate problems that those industries have.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So even if the consumers are making the right choice, it's still going to be for sale because the government's literally making it to be for sale.
With our money.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. That humane washing and just marketing lies to the public in that way. Very frustrating. So, with all the issues that there are when it comes to animals being exploited and so many risks and so much is dangerous for them and for us, then Amanda, how do you generally choose your campaigns, or what does it depend on?
Wow. Okay. Great question. So this is really going to be a loaded answer. Okay. So, uh, I feel as ARI has grown over time, we really want to make an impact on animal liberation as a whole. Oh, actually, I have a graphic. I'll share my screen on my graphic. That's okay. So, okay. So we really want to take a look at how we want to achieve animal liberation altogether. And to me, that really means that animals are free of exploitation, meaning like used for any reason, and including having their habitat encroached on or being poisoned or polluted to death. And so recognizing that these campaigns all take so long, like our campaigns take forever. Some stores can take months, some stores can take years, some bills. I'll say every bill has a multi-year lifespan in the legislature, except for one that we've worked on so far, passed in 4.5 months, but that's an anomaly. I would say on average, 3 years is what you could expect if you are being really strategic about your bill and willing to revise it as much as you can every year. So when we take a look at this, like I've kind of split up animal liberation into different facets of industry. And so we want to make an impact on all these industries because if I introduce a bill in the food industry, that might go to a certain committee in the legislature. But then I could also introduce a bill in the entertainment industry and I might be able to get that a different pathway. And I just feel that these all enable each other and that if we can make an impact on any of them, we can influence the paradigm shift of like what we really need for people to stop using animals altogether. And so I'd say that we just picked a campaign in each of these sectors that we felt were industrially weak and that we could make a global impact on, like with our message that maybe and this maybe happened coincidentally, but just worked out that I've identified that a lot of our issues are, not that culturally enmeshed in America. And so we can make changes and advocate for changes in America that speak to the whole world. So that's really important. And then also something that we definitely consider in the impact is obviously the amount of animals. And so I personally consider a animal factory farm for food and an animal factory farm for pets or lab mills all the same. Like they're all in a warehouse, thousands and thousands of animals being bred and repeatedly. So ideally, we would want to address industries that reduced populations on factory farms. But I also really see a lot of value in doing our circus campaign. We've been working on circus for many years, even though it's less animals maybe that are in that industry. It's industrially weak, it's time to strike. But the animals that are in that industry have been suffering for a really long time. Like we just actually finally, after 3 years, 2.5 sessions, prohibited circus performances by elephants, big cats, primates, and bears. And so what that does is it stops these 2 elephants, I think actually 3 elephants, but these poor elephants that are almost 60 years old that have been traveling and performing for 50 years. So older than I'm longer than I've even been alive, these poor elephants have been trapped and are continuing the perpetuation of our idea that animals are here for us to use, or that those wild animals would even do any of that. It's really dangerous, right? So I guess just whatever we've evaluated will have the biggest impact, is to sum all that up.
Absolutely. And as you grow as an organization, you'll have more reach, of course. So, Carrie, do you want to add anything to that? Otherwise, we can dive a little bit more into your various current initiatives and pepper it with good news. There is some.
Just one point, because Amanda had mentioned timeline, like some of the bills take a long time. So just to give some examples, in New Jersey, to ban ivory in New Jersey took 2 months only. And to ban gestation crates, the small crates that mother pigs are in, took 10 years.
Yeah.
So 2 months to 10 years. So the whole objective is to not give up, because it could eventually pass, especially if it's reintroduced year after year.
Nice, 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 nice. Dedication and perseverance. It is a marathon, not a sprint for sure. So let's start with octopus. Can you guys talk a little bit about, octopus farming, which poses a unique threat to our ecosystems, and like what is octopus farming? What's up? Like why is it a thing now, it seems? And what wins have you had?
Yeah, great. Octopus is great. Basically, the reason that became known to us is in 2022, there were plans for the world's first octopus slaughterhouse, basically. There was plans for the world's first octopus factory farm. And so what we found is actually 8 different countries have been doing research on implementing this type of octopus farming for their meat, and that it's still in a research phase because octopuses are biologically incompatible with farming. So that's why they don't farm them yet, because they're literally biologically incompatible with it, which I can go into about a little bit. But in 2022, we had already introduced fur farming legislation and animal testing related legislation and circus legislation. So that following year, 4th year, when we found out about the proposed octopus farm, my colleague Joshua and I, we were just like, what can we do from Washington State? And pulling on that there was actually a recent aquaculture disaster that had released almost 300,000 salmon into the water in Washington State. We were like, what if we pitch a preventative octopus farming bill so that they can't ever implement that industry here in Washington, and sending the message to the industry that like, hey, no, we're against that. Like, obviously we know octopuses are sentient, have the capacity to suffer. And obviously there's a reason why you can't farm them yet. So we're saying no. And we introduced it in Washington, and it passed. In Washington, there's a biannual session, so every session is 2 years long. So we introduced it in 2023, and then carried over and passed in 2024, which was really excellent. And so since then, it's totally exploded. we worked with ALDF and social compassion legislation to help get that introduced in California, where it's also already passed. And then currently, 2025, we actually had 9 states with octopus legislation. So, you know, part of our strategy about fast tracking these issues is like working in tandem. You know, we really want these same evidence. We can utilize the evidence that's been solidified in Washington to make that same case in all the other states. Obviously, all the other coastal states are under threat basically for the same thing. And so now that the case is closed in Washington, California, that yes, octopuses are sentient and can suffer, and that yes, farming them would cause damage to the ecosystems, we can apply that evidence everywhere. So obviously we need to implement that everywhere. And since we started those bills, we've been saying, hey, if these animals get out, they're apex predators, right? So they're apex predators in marine ecosystems, and they target crustaceans. They can taste through their tentacles. So crazy. So they know what they're looking for when they're looking behind things. And if any unnatural amount of these carnivorous animals got out into ecosystems, they would eat all the crabs. So cause ecological devastation. And so this summer, that actually has occurred. So there's actually been a major octopus invasion on the southern shore of England, where now all the octopus have eaten up all of the crabs and lobsters. And honestly, I talked to the fishery manager, and she said that sometimes the octopuses would take scallops into the crab pots and have like a buffet in the crab pots. So they figured it out up there, and the scientists have no idea where they came from. They speculate maybe came from Greece, maybe came from Morocco, but I'm saying if they're genetically modifying octopuses to be more survivable, like higher survival rates, and to grow faster, that obviously we could expect any kind of ecological devastation from anyone having an octopus farm anywhere.
Wow, it almost sounds like a science fiction movie, like a monster movie, but it's true. And I forget, and I didn't forget completely, but right, octopuses are predators. I mean, and they're some of the smartest animals, right?
Right.
Such a
Yeah.
learning experience, right?
Well, they're documented to escape from every facility that there is.
Yeah,
So we've looked into
they're escape artists.
exactly. And so most of the time, most of the news that we've heard of these octopuses escaping are from aquariums, right? And those are facilities with one. So you're talking about having a facility with 200,000, like, come on. And they have to house them together. So if you have a facility with 200,000 or 50,000, they house them in up to 200 per tank that I've seen. And part of their biology is that their heart stops beating when they're swimming. So they can't escape other aggressive tank mates that well that you would expect. I mean, these aren't docile animals. They've been seen strangling each other. So it's like, why? And sorry, I just want to say also that they're semiparous, which means that they die after breeding. So it's not, that's what I mean by biologically unsuited for farming. Like the same reason that they would farm other animals, they keep getting a bunch of them. You can't do that with octopus. That's why there's research on it. And, you know, the cruelty extends beyond that. Like I said, they eat other animals. So because of their crustacean-based feed and the type of waste they would emit, we've actually been able to use that same evidence, apply it to fur farming. So it's been able to strengthen our fur farming effort as well, and our foie gras farming effort, because we've been able to kind of unveil that these factory farms of animal fecal waste are causing, an extraordinary amount of harmful algae blooms all over our country. And I mean, all over the world, honestly, but I've researched the United States. So I've researched Alaska, Hawaii, like Washington, California, Maine, Florida, everywhere. Everywhere is suffering from harmful algae blooms so badly that there's like an 80% decrease in marine populations of animals everywhere. So the fishermen aren't able to catch as many fish as they were in the 90s. Like in some cases, the populations are completely collapsed. Like in New York, they used to be able to catch 1,000,000 pounds of lobsters, and now they can barely catch like 100,000. It's just totally insane. And the cause of all that ocean warming is these harmful algae blooms, the body heat and like metabolization of all these harmful algae, which is bacteria. It's not really algae. Sorry, I'll specify. When you see harmful algae bloom, it's not really algae. It's bacteria that ate algae and then is reflecting green color in the water. And so the animal fecal waste fertilizes this whole process, warms up all the water, kills off all the indigenous animals in the water. So this has just all been exposed because we were working on octopus. So it's strengthened all these other resource intensive types of farming that we can also parallel, have parallel campaigns against or to reform.
In fact, in New Jersey, the harmful algae blooms, that was such a hot topic because of all the beach closures. So we were able to get 20 sponsors so far. The bill numbers in New Jersey, A5078 in the Assembly and S3914 in the Senate. But we got 20 sponsors, and that was one of the biggest points that Amanda just made. So in order for an octopus to grow 1 pound, they need to eat 3 pounds, which is a lot of waste. So when the waste goes into the waterways and it's making our waters toxic with the harmful algae blooms, that causes the beach closures. So it was a really hot topic for New Jersey, the beach closures. So nobody wants more toxic water. Even the wild-caught fishermen, they like this bill because they want clean waters. So the big deal with octopus is all the waste that occurs because of how much they eat. And so we want to keep the waters clean. So that was one of the major reasons to prohibit octopus farming from ever coming to the US in the first place.
Wow. Yeah, it's so important what you're doing in terms of reminding people that science it backs up all of your proposals. And then that's part of what ARI provides is evidence and research-based reports for policy change and up-to-date correlative data on specific cases, case studies to help organizations compile effective reports and fact sheets to prompt policy changes. Obviously, I've seen that on your website. So, but Amanda, do you want to comment on why that is so important and how folks, if they want a specific data, how they can receive it?
Yeah, I can talk about why that's so important and what we've learned while we learn this process and how to be successful is that the government's there to protect business. So we can't go in with just this ethical argument because the ethical argument could be applied to all animals. And obviously, I'm vegan. We want to help all animals, of course, but in the legislative process, you need them to pay attention only to your one bill. Like we need to address only this one issue in this one bill. You don't want all this like slippery slope kind of arguments about your issue. I found that if we're going to work on a campaign legislatively, honestly, anyway, but especially legislatively, that ethics really aren't enough because if it's already established, some people are just going to believe that that is okay. And so if we're taking that away, we're going to take everything away. And if we're not solution focused or evidence based on how this is negatively harming people or how it's negatively harming the environment, which will end up harming people, the campaign can just be ignored, honestly, because if it already exists, especially that's saying, I mean, even with octopus, we've had people say, well, we already farm pigs. And I'm saying, well, octopuses definitely aren't even like pigs. You can breed pig multiple times. Not that I want anybody to be breeding pigs, but I'm saying like, we're talking about a whole different species here. And you're saying because we farm this other species that has nothing to do with octopuses, that we should be able to farm octopuses. Like, no, that's not the logic. We need to look at what makes octopuses unsuitable in order to make our issue so unique that, it's not threatening. And that it really only affects the industry that we want it to affect, like for bills. It's just so important that we create a movement that's based on truth and science without just emotion, because any kind of emotional based thing is just giving it reason to be tossed out the window or ignored, and so that's why we're trying to promote that all these things are really thoroughly researched, that every single impact on people or other business is accounted for that we can think of, right? Why have one reason when you can have a gazillion reasons? Like, why have just ethics? Oh, these animals might be harmed, as that's the reason. when you can actually say it's causing X disease or causing X business to fail or harming X ecosystem. You know, the reasons are endless as long as we keep our minds open to questions, right?
Yeah, as you're saying that, I'm thinking, what? Emotions? Vegans are never emotional. No, never. We're never out there passionately yelling and begging and screaming, but I'm also hearing like people who are sort of science nerds or data nerds and wondering where they might fit, where their talents and interests and where they might want to help. This is a great way for those who for whom that comes naturally to step in and really make an impact, to crunch that data, to do the research. So really there's a place for everyone in that way. Carrie, did you want to add anything?
Just to your point about there are some politicians who don't care about animals. So one good thing about the octopus bill is that because there is no octopus farming now, we're not disrupting any industry. So it's the proactive measure to prevent it from ever coming here. But yeah, so some politicians they're more interested in the environment, some are more interested in industry, some are animal lovers. So if we just cover the whole gamut, then it's more likely to pass. We just have to customize based on previous votes that they've done before in the legislature.
Excellent. All right, we do have some questions, you guys, coming in already, so it's going to move us around with our topics, but the first question from Deb is it necessary to have lobbyists, paid or volunteer, to have any effect on legislation being proposed or passed?
I don't think that you necessarily have to have someone beyond yourself as long as someone's willing, because it's going to take it somebody to deliver the information to the initial politicians, right? Like all the evidence that's being gathered to support your proposal for change has to be delivered. So what Michelle was talking about earlier is after we gather all our research, we turn it into a fact sheet or what one pager. And so we take all our research, put all our evidence together in a way that's easy to understand, bullet points, put it on a one-page document, ideally 2 pages if necessary. Obviously, we could go on and on endlessly about why not to farm every animal probably, but keep it to 1 or 2 pages. It would be better received that way. And then somebody has to deliver that information. And so, of course, the bills could be abandoned after introduction, but there's a funnel system. So it's a really great question because honestly, I made another graphic that can explain this. Let me share my graphic here. So, okay. Most state legislatures operate pretty much the same way, that only about 10% of them are going to make it. So they'll introduce about 5,000 bills amongst all the legislators. There's a bunch of senators, a bunch of representatives or assembly people, whatever they're called in your state. They'll get about 5,000 total of them, introduce it, and at the end, only 10% have made it. So, I made this graphic to kind of make a visual guide for everybody to understand that, like, if your state's only pitching 10 bills that year, you might get like 1 bill that affects animals that could affect 1 animal in 1 industry out of trillions and trillions of animals that are suffering, like that we really need to scale this up, that we can't really wait on these organizations that exist already. Like, obviously, I mean, they all are, we all know that there's multiple organizations that work on policies for animals. I'm saying that there needs to be way more. I'm saying that we all need to mobilize, that if the state legislature is only designed to pass 10% of the bills that are introduced, we need to do our best to get a bigger piece of that. Like, if 5,000 bills are going to be introduced, we need to do our best to say that, hey, animals are used in every single one of your districts. Animals are sold or used or exist in every single person's district. So there's really no reason that every single person couldn't have a bill that affects animals. And we need to stop kind of looking at this as in scarcity. Like, we need to stop saying that, oh, we can only pass 1 animal bill a year because so-and-so of the chair doesn't like animals, so they're not going to hear multiple issues. Like, no, we need to throw all that out the window. Like, we need to stop acting like we can only pass 1 bill. Like we need to actually introduce like thousands of bills. Like it's really great that ARI is able to introduce 24 bills last year, but if 10% pass, that's not even 3, which is literally what translated to the truth. We did pass 2 bills out of the 24 that we introduced. So the Washington Circus bill and then also an animal testing bill in Connecticut. Out of the 24 that are introduced, everything's still alive. So nothing has like failed to the point where it can't be still resumed. We call it under revision. We just, if the bill doesn't pass or doesn't make it beyond committee, like we just say we have to revise it. We'll reintroduce it next year. But, you know, if we introduce 50 bills, we could realistically hope to expect 5 that can pass. And that means that we're kind of restricted to only affecting possibly 5 industries that hurt animals every year. Like that's a lot, like that's a whole year. Like, so I'm saying that we really can't be distracted with like snuffing out other people's campaigns. Like if you don't like someone else's campaign, like just don't join their campaign. Just let them do whatever they're gonna do, because every single bill that gets introduced evidentiates the fact that these animals can suffer and that they are someone and that there's someone beyond the commodification in there. They're not a robot. So, yeah, we need more. We need to scale up. We need everybody on the call to get motivated to add policies to your campaigns. And you can't expect it to pass. Like, especially if you're not going to advocate for it. Obviously, like Deb's question, you could just introduce it. You can get news off of just introducing it. That's great. But there are a bunch of steps that are designed to get your bill out of there. There's like 18 more steps where your bill could just fall off. And so, yeah, it takes some monitoring, like, but not a lot. Carrie, do you think it's a lot? What we refresh the bill status page every day. I'm monitored. I have the alerts on my phone. So if a bill goes to the next step, I already know right away. Every bill, I mean, I think every single state has a monitoring form where you can sign up for text messages or something like that. And even if they don't, what, you refresh the page? I refresh my email every day, so it's not that big.
Yeah, I get the alerts too. And so with or without lobbyists, we just need more people for this movement. That's the bottom line. And then the good news is that there's so many steps along the way. It's an opportunity for press releases or letter to the editor. So every time there's an update with the bill, it's an announcement. So for example, if it's introduced, do a press release. If we got a Senate number, do a press release. If it's passed on to the committee, press release. Passed on to the assembly, press release. Letter to the editor if we go to the Senate, and then the governor's desk. So even though the percentage that pass is small, the perception is that there's work being done, it's either about to be passed or people think it has passed. So it's just all about public awareness of your topic.
Absolutely. That's what I was going to say. It's hopeful because there's no wasted action here.
Right.
Right? Because even if it doesn't get passed, like you're saying, the optics, the awareness that is raised, the attention, the media attention, it's all that in and of itself is worthwhile and moves the needle a little bit forward. So we have some questions coming in, but before that, let's just, because fur is so important to campaign to activists, and we've always said that it's winnable. And there's lots of pressure campaigns using street activism on the consumer, going for the consumer end as well as the corporate end of that. And there have been some wins, but can you talk to us and get us up to speed on fur farming, where it is right now? It's a big risk as you have, behind that, the public health issues and ecosystems issues. Like, what's the current state of the fur industry? And this was an interesting fact I got from your website, which is fur is largely a foreign industry with 94% of furs coming from overseas, and 40 million or more animals are farmed for their fur every year.
Yes, I got that statistic from a Humane World report that the pelts were down to 40 million. I think that was 2023 or 2024 statistic. But yeah, I'm happy to talk about fur. Yeah, because definitely we've been trying to affect the fur industry, to affect those animals. Obviously, our motivation is that these animals are being electrocuted. We don't want that at all. So with the fur industry, like I said earlier, it's more industrially weak. We don't need it in our culture. It's so far beyond needing that we can then make an international impact. Because yeah, like I previously pointed out, that you just reminded me that most fur products being sold are from designers that exist overseas, like Louis Vuitton or Fendi or Dior, for example. Like they're overseas HQ, and so that's what I mean by foreign owned. But in our advocacy for this issue is actually the first bill that we tried. This actually all started because back in 2019, after we were honestly like frustrated with our results from producer-based advocacy, even though there are lots of results, like I don't need to go into it. You all know what they were. California had just banned fur, right? So we were like, we need to ban fur. How are we going to do that? And so we contacted the person that created their fact sheet, and we were like, how can we get behind this issue? And she was like, basically, you need to provide this evidence. And we were like, okay, great. So we started to look into what the stakeholders were in Washington State. This is back when I lived in Seattle. So we found that there were 7 active fur farms then, at least that were accurately recorded and reporting on the IRS. Obviously, there's going to be people who are illegally producing things all the time. That's illegal, right? So we can only affect what's legal. We were tracking these 7 farmers, and our fur farming bill actually would have included a grant for them to transition to a new business. So the state representatives didn't want to just put them out of business. They were like, we need to protect the farmers. We'll give them a grant to transition to some other type of agriculture. And so that's a bill that we have been working with kind of the last 5 years. And so over time, because we've had our bill, it's been in the news many times. They must track it. They must have alerts where if fur is mentioned in a bill, they notice. So lots of opposition for that every single year. And so during this last 5 years, we've had our bill go up every single year. And COVID happened, right? Like, so COVID happened on mink farms. Before that, there wasn't, I guess there probably was a known pandemic risk with minks, but now we really know that there's a pandemic risk with minks because for some reason, they're one of the animals that can mutate viruses and spill them over to people. So we thought we had enough evidence to prohibit mink farming in Washington then. With COVID, there's 400 global outbreaks, but it still wasn't enough because they knew we were doing it for ethics in the first place, just saying. But anyway, so since then, over 4,000 brands have banned fur. We know all major groups that have made a lot of that happen, that have been like knocking down the dominoes of so many companies don't sell fur anymore. So the pandemic, the legislative pressure, and the pandemic pressure, now we have reason to believe all of them have stopped operating. And so we have 5 of them confirmed that they're not operating anymore, like based on their paperwork and investigations with our state departments. And then 2, we also have reason to believe that they're not operating because of other different channels. And so that's so exciting to think that even without the legislation all the way passing yet, the pressure was still there holistically, that now we think there are no mink farms in Washington State. We're still going to go after our bill, obviously, because we've amassed tons of evidence. We have evidence that the Department of Ecology found that the mink farms actually were suffocating the salmon. So there's been a complete decimation of salmon and trout, federally endangered animals, in multiple different rivers of Washington State because of the proximity of these mink farms. So we have that. And then not only COVID, now we got HPAI on mink farms. So this is another thing that has just been exposed that makes it right now is the best time to get into this political advocacy, because HPAI has jumped from birds into mammals and can be transmitted to people. So it came from birds and got into the mink farms. A couple other countries had to cull like 500,000 minks to prevent this worrying strain, they described it as, that could jump from minks to people. And then in 2024, sorry, that was 2022, 2024, they found HPAI in cows. And then that transmitted to people. And then in the end of 2024, they found a new strain that had evolved within a person. And so basically with HPAI, you know, all it's going to take now that it's mutated so far into mammals is for one person to be infected with HPAI and another virus that can transmit to people at the same time, for a new reassortant to occur that will then spread to people. And so HPAI has a 50% fatality rate right now. So all the people that have gotten HPAI, 50% have died. And that's really alarming. Like we had a 5% fatality, I think, with COVID. 50% is a lot. It's 4 of us on this call, so that'd be 2 of us. Like that's crazy. And so right now is a really important time that we can kind of call attention to HPAI outbreaks on the mink farms and say, hey, we don't want these to come back. Or if you have them, now's the time to get rid of them. I read something the other day about fur in Utah being down like 90% as well. As long as we can get the government to acknowledge that these are HPAI vectors like the other countries have, we can make a really big impact on our country and abroad. And it's literally the truth. It's not something it's not my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, you would think that alone would be reason enough to make lawmakers sit up and pay attention and be motivated to pass some laws, you know, be proactive about that. And Europe, people are dying and animals are dying, of course. And so, Carrie, did you want to add anything to what Amanda
Just
said?
one more thing to the fur industry. So similar to octopus farming or any farming for that matter, the fecal waste runoff makes our waters toxic. So with all our bills, they not only have a cruelty element because of the torture with the animals, but also toxicity to humans. So all our bills cover both the cruelty, so we want to prevent it, of course, and then the human health threat. We want to keep humans safe.
Mm.
So like we were mentioning before with the politicians, we hit both avenues in order to keep everybody safe.
Yeah, that holistic approach that you were talking about. So, we have a couple of questions, sort of how-to questions, so we can talk a little bit about that, and then maybe we'll go back to some of the other initiatives, because I had a question too from Antonio. How do we generate new bills? How do we write them? How do we write, who do we write it to? And another, which is there a book that tutors you on writing to politicians, corporations at the executive level, and how to address your issue so they feel it's necessary to answer your protest? I know you guys have something called the Animal Policy Accelerator Program, so I'm wondering whether you cover everything in that program. If people want to sign up for that, you could talk about that, but certainly political advocacy is complicated to navigate. And so if you want to explain simply a little bit where folks start, whatever you'd like to say.
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, okay, absolutely. That's part of why I wanted to demystify it. So yes, we have to gather enough appropriate evidence that's localized and specialized to that jurisdiction that will motivate them to want to make a change to their existing laws. And so a lot of evidence really already exists out there, especially for ARI campaigns. We have a lot of evidence. A lot of it's on our website, but a lot of it is being still on the way. And other advocacy groups, I always think of this thing that Jacob Conroy said, that's like the starting line doesn't have to be at the start. So you can pick issues that the research is already done, just for easy. There's so much research already done. Just talk about why it's pertinent to your state or your country or where, whatever the jurisdiction is, the county. And when you reach out to legislators with your one pager, after you get the evidence and put it on a one pager, when you reach out to politicians, what you want to do is kind of just reach out to advocate for the bill as if the bill already exists, and it does, because you're making it exist. So you start reaching out to different people, whatever your capacity for meetings is. And throughout those meetings, you'll be educating on that issue. And eventually, somebody will want to be the sponsor of your issue. We've never pitched an issue that we didn't get a sponsor for, somebody eventually will want to, because what we found is that the legislators do want to help animals. They do want to help biodiversity and sustainability, but they don't actually have all the answers themselves. They're relying on us advocates to tell them the best way that they can make an impact. So if every legislator can run 15 to 20 bills, and I'm saying, hey, the best way that you can impact animals and biodiversity is to pass this bill that will prevent foie gras fattening because it's going to hurt all these other animals, they're going to be like, oh, great, that's a way I can impact biodiversity. I can help my constituents and say we're helping animals like that, or whatever it is. They're honestly relying on us to convey.
Okay, great. So we've put the link to the accelerator program in the comments. Is there anything else you'd like to say about that?
Yeah.
Carrie?
Oh, sorry.
any-
I'll say more about
Go
the,
ahead, go ahead, go ahead. Well,
just
Carrie, and then go ahead, Amanda, go ahead.
yeah, I'd love to get Carrie's view, because we started the accelerator program because, like I said, in our history, it took us multiple years of attempts before we finally got a bill passed. And we're all volunteers. Like it's a volunteer-based organization. We all were working all of our jobs outside of this advocacy. So it took us 4 years to finally get a bill passed. And we're thinking it's completely unreasonable to think of all these passionate advocates around the country or world that they need to spend 4 more years dedicating like 20 hours a week on top of their job to figure all this out, and then spend 4 years to get a success. Like that's all way too long. Like the animals really don't have that long. So we were like, we need to clone ourselves. We need to get our same strategy implemented everywhere as fast as possible. So we started a mentorship. And it's crazy because last year it was just our idea. Like it was just an idea that we were going to start this mentorship and see if any advocates around the country wanted to add policy work and wanted to be taught how to do policies. And honestly, just being taught how to do policies really is nothing. You need someone to hold your hand. And because it's a lot on the way. There's so much side campaigns, so much steps along the way that I could not tell everybody every single step on in an hour call. That's unrealistic. So we designed a 10-month-long mentorship to teach every single step really thoroughly with really high quality, but that I'm also their mentor. So every single like VIP, like one-on-one mentor, I'm mentoring our mentee. I'm mentoring them through introducing at least 4 bills. And then we have unlimited spaces for people who just want to watch the program. And so last year, that was just our idea. We got 5 people that wanted to do it, shockingly, and then we did it. And so as a result of the program, that's how we got 24 whole bills as an organization that tackle things from like pet breeding mills to octopus farming to just all kinds of things, different levels of animal industry that now we opened it to 10 people this year. So we're trying to double that impact. And so we have honestly, we have one VIP spot open. So if one person wants to introduce 4 bills on their own, we'll partner with you. And then we have unlimited space for the observer level that basically you can come to all the workshops, see all the progress that we're doing, and basically learn along with the people who are going to be doing the footwork for the bills.
Nice. Oh my God, so pioneering this is, and so important and filling such an important gap. Carrie, any comments on that?
Well, I joined the accelerator program a year ago, and it's awesome. You have the group support and the workshops, and Amanda's the best, always teaching all our tricks and tips and secrets to success. So I really enjoyed it because, well, and I didn't mention this in the beginning. I saw Amanda speak at the AVA, the Animal Vegan Advocacy Summit, and I saw her speak. And for some reason, I thought in my head, like I was just doing animal rights and dog adoption at the time, but I had in my head that you had to be an attorney to get legislation passed as lobbyists and all that. And then when I heard Amanda speak at the AVA, she was talking about how you don't have to be an attorney, you just have to be motivated. So I'm like, well, I'm motivated, I could do that. So then I joined her group last August, and it's awesome because the research is already done, like she had mentioned. You reach out to the legislators in order to get a Zoom appointment. And anyone who says yes to a Zoom appointment is going to sponsor the bill or at least support the bill. So you're already a win-win right there at the first Zoom call. And then we follow up to make sure they submit as the sponsor. And then, of course, it goes to the committee, and then we speak at the hearings. But all those little steps, it was just nice to learn from an expert along the way for not just motivation, but so I didn't feel alone and trying to learn it by myself. So the fact that the research has been done, learning from the experts, it's an awesome experience. And like I mentioned, we've got 20 for octopus and 10 for foie gras in New Jersey. So we've in the 10 months of the mentorship, we got 30 sponsors in New Jersey. So exciting times for animals.
It really is. And it's again very hopeful that maybe the system does work sometimes, right? That a lay person can go in that who is charged up about something and present it and it can go all the way through, So that's amazing. Really, really amazing. But maybe Carrie, you want to talk now a little bit about live animal exhibits
Sure.
and how people can support legislation to prohibit new live animal exhibits within commercial spaces in New Jersey, where you and I are located, and we've been doing years of boots on the ground protests in front of Woodbridge Mall. Do you want to update us on that?
Sure. So the new name, it used to be called Sequest, but the new name is now Woodbridge Aquarium. So they still have farm animals in the Woodbridge Mall. And so we still do the protest to try to get farm animals out of the mall. But the good news is that the illegal foot pedicure has now been dismantled. So they no longer do that. And the exotic permit was revoked after 3,500 complaints to New Jersey Fish and Wildlife. And so we just have the farm animals left under the new name, Woodbridge Aquarium. So we're still out there, we're still working hard. And I can put a link in the chat for legislation that we're working on to try to prohibit animals as in an exhibit or commercial space. So the bill actually would say, it says excluding zoos, because we just have to take one step at a time. Of course, we don't want zoos, but we'll first start with commercial space, like inside the mall, for example, is where animals shouldn't be. So it's to prevent animal exhibits in commercial spaces. So I could put that link in case anyone wants to sign our action. And oh, we didn't even mention that, Amanda. So for each bill, we have the different actions and petitions where the constituents support really helps, really helps. Like if we're working on one bill in Massachusetts, the Massachusetts constituents may have more impact than somebody in England, for example. So even though we get worldwide signatures, the local constituents really help as far as pushing these bills along. But I'll put the link in the chat.
Thank you. That would be great. And people can just go to your website is animalrightsinitiative.org, yes?
Mhm. Yeah, we have lots of actions there.
So Amanda, a question maybe for you in the chat. Do folks recognize that before the House of Representatives, a bill is introduced by Representative Nicole Maliotakis, HR 3456, Captivity of Helpless Elephants Reduction Act of 2025? And I think this all goes to what we're talking about. Anyone willing to take on the Association of Zoos and Aquariums?
Sorry, what's the actual question though? I'm not familiar with the bill.
Okay, I think they were just asking if you're familiar or just sort of commenting that that's something that's happening currently.
No, I'm not sure about it. Honestly, we have so many of our own campaigns, it's hard to keep up with other campaigns.
Yeah,
So
no,
yeah,
understandable.
I have no idea, sorry. But I'm really happy to hear about more advocacy for elephants because it's like I said earlier, it's industrially weak and those elephants are still suffering, the same ones. So even in Washington, we had a public hearing this year. Someone on the legislature was like, "Oh, I saw elephants as a kid and it made me love them." And we actually were able to bring to the table that the same elephants are performing today. So it kind of got everybody to realize that, wow, like this animals are suffering for so long, and why are we even still allowing that in our society? Like, why are we saying animals are here for us to use like that?
Yeah. And as you say, it creates a false narrative that these species are readily available in the wild and willingly comply with, as if
Yeah,
they give consent or naturally exhibit these performances, when in fact it requires years of physically domineering punishment and subjection to unethical abuses. They have to condition them. I mean, they have to, negative reinforcement. But that's the direction that things are going, hopefully, right? I mean, Barnum and Bailey, when we look at that and a lot of the other circuses, it seems
yeah.
to,
Honestly, there is good news. So I think there's pretty much only like 7 national services that still travel animals around. Usually the same animals are rented out from 1 or 2 facilities. But honestly, just because the issue is addressed in 13 or 12 states, I'm saying that because not every animal is affected the same in every state, that we can just stop. There's 37 other states and 4 territories, honestly, that still would allow circus performances, which are traveling animal acts, right? And so that's just, yeah, just another example of something that we definitely can't allow as advocates, is to think that somebody else has it and that we can give up on it. That we need to make sure that these campaigns end. Like, we need to go all the way to the end. Like, we can't feel comfortable.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. All right, we have some good questions coming in, and people are asking about how they can get involved and calls to action. So we definitely want to make sure that we emphasize how people can do things right away locally. But can we talk a bit about foie gras? Because that's another certainly campaign that feels winnable for us, and you've mentioned it already. Talk about that, what you've proposed there, and getting foie gras prohibited state by state, and how that's going. Like, what's the state of that right now?
Yes, perfect. Thank you so much. Yes, I can talk about foie gras. I could probably talk about it for hours. I've learned just so much crazy details about it. And again, just like with any of these other campaigns, we picked it because obviously animals are suffering. And obviously animals that are force fed are really suffering. So with the community already taking action for foie gras, it just totally makes sense to try to make an impact there, especially when part of the evidence that I found is that there's really only 4 major producers of foie gras. I wouldn't even call all 4 of them major. There's 2 really major ones that exist in New York. And so something, in New York City, they did prohibit the sale of foie gras. They did pass a citywide ban on that, but it was overturned by the state. But that's something Carrie was bringing up earlier, that really doesn't matter that that happened, because still news articles all the time are coming out saying that they did ban it. So people everywhere in the world are still being influenced that New York City did ban it, even though right now it's under litigation or whatever, it's being challenged.
Mm.
And so when I was reading the court documents, basically the court documents were saying that there were no public health concerns. And I was like, I bet that there are. And I was like, obviously there are. Like, if you're force feeding an animal that more food than they would naturally intake, that means you're creating more waste than they would naturally make. So that's already a health impact. So I was like, I'm going to find every single health impact that I can on foie gras. And basically, foie gras is just the internationally recognized term for a duck or a goose liver that's been forcibly fattened to go from an average of 40 grams to achieve at least 300 grams, as defined by the European Union. And so most places that will sell it also have to abide by that same European law. And the reason that it's kind of difficult to pass, or appears difficult to pass legislation on that in the US, is that we have this international trade agreement that allows it to be sold. And so that means we have to allow how it's produced. And in states like New York, or I think even North Carolina, they're right to farm states. So if the farms already exist and they've already existed for a certain amount of time, nobody can take action against it unless there's a major public health concern, right? And so there's so many public health concerns. Literally, other countries, 27 other countries now have prohibited the sale or import or production of foie gras, which is waterfowl fattening. I'll just describe it that. Intentionally fattening these waterfowl. And so all these countries are eliminating that, not only because it's unethical and the ducks suffer during the force feeding phase, but also because there's potential contamination. What I've found basically is that foie gras is usually served raw or rare or medium rare or not cooked all the way. And so basically, if you're supposed to cook food, at least poultry, the guidance would say poultry, to at least 165 degrees to kill all the viruses and bacteria, they're not cooking the foie gras like that. They can't cook the foie gras like that because it's so fatty that it just melts away. And so most recipes, most industry influencers are recommending that you sear it a little bit for color. If you're serving it as a lobe, if you're serving it as a mousse, it can just be served ready to eat, like no further cooking. Some recipes are 118 degrees, 135, but I didn't really see any that said cook it to 165 degrees. So to me, that means that most of this foie gras that's being sold is actually being served under the risk of exposing people to a lot of diseases. And so other countries like Australia or New Zealand have deemed it a public health risk because of its potential to host listeria. Listeria is a really major concerning bacteria because it can survive chilling. That's how they're supposed to kill bacteria. It can survive. And so my hypothesis is, okay, well, if they're enlarging the liver, it's probably not as effective. So what I found was that that's right. They're enlarging the liver, making it go through this huge inflammation that it can't actually effectively metabolize out these harmful compounds. So things like listeria or Campylobacter, Salmonella, whatever, all get concentrated in the liver because they're exposed to a lot of feces, and then their livers can't metabolize out the harmful compounds. So then people are eating like a lobe of liver that's contaminated with all these potential bacteria. And so not even that, I also found another strange study. Most of the studies came out of Bulgaria. I'm sorry, Hungary. But anyway, so I actually found that they've done tests on flame retardant chemicals too. So brominated phenols is what the studies were on. And they tested all these different animal food stuffs. That's how they described it. And they found that the foie gras was the highest amount of concentration of these endocrine disrupting brominated phenols was found that in land-based animals was found in the foie gras. So out of all the land-based meats that they evaluated, beef, chicken, pork, whatever, they found extremely high rates, 10 times higher than the other meats, all contaminated, concentrated in the foie gras because the liver can't metabolize it, right? So then I found even more. I actually found this other concern, amyloidosis, amyloids. I had no idea what that was before I studied the foie gras bill. And basically I found that essentially what we've been saying all this time, the more stressed the animals are, the unhealthier they are, the more stressed we are, right? We've all been saying that. We're eating the animal stress. So that's literally true. Our bodies, when we're under stress, make what's called amyloid plaques, amyloid fibrils. It's like a misfolded fibril in your body. And normally your liver would be able to metabolize out, but like I said, it's reduced capacity. So as people or animals go under this stress, these amyloids get deposited within our extracellular space and our blood passageways. So scientists have found that if you eat a product that's really highly contaminated with amyloids, or even has amyloids at all, you accelerate production of those amyloids, and that you digest them. They're resistant to digestion and cooking. So even if you did cook the foie gras, it still has amyloids. So you eat it, you accelerate production of this. And what does this all cause? Alzheimer's. I had this generalized understanding that plaque clogged our arteries, this like loose understanding of that. Don't eat meat because it clogs your arteries, right? But the amyloid plaques are literally what build up in our bodies and block your brain from signaling to your organs. And that's what Alzheimer's is. That's why it's fatal, because your brain can't tell your organs how to function anymore. And I've read in my studies, it takes 30 years to build up. But if we're eating animals that are really stressed, highly contaminated with amyloids, we accelerate that. And so correlative data that I found that's like totally just astronomical. In the United States, Alzheimer's rates are like 1 out of 9 or 1 out of 10, depending on what state you look at for seniors. So everybody over 65, 1 out of 9 or 10 of them has Alzheimer's or related degenerative diseases in the United States. In France, the world's #1 consumer of foie gras, 260 times more per capita than we would in the US, they have rates of Alzheimer's over double ours. So it's 125% higher. 1 out of 4 seniors has Alzheimer's in France, which is just crazy. And so All that is also alarming until I found the HPAI concern. All that we were like advocating like crazy for all that. And then we figured out that the birds have HPAI. The birds are creating the HPAI. We found that HPAI doesn't affect all birds the same, like is the general understanding. It's actually the ducks. It's actually the geese. It's actually the waterfowl that create these new strains of HPAI, right? So HPAI is highly pathogenic avian influenza. Avian influenza has been around a long time. There's low pathogenic strains of it, but it's evolved now. So it's highly pathogenic now, which means spread and is more deadly now. So like since 1996, it's been rapidly evolving into 2020, where there was a whole new strain that affected mammals. And so in 2020, in the Netherlands, they found these swans infected with this strain of HPAI that quickly spread across Europe from the Netherlands. And what I found in my research is that actually over 30% of their entire continent's outbreaks occurred in one county in one country, in France, where they produce all their foie gras. And it's not my opinion. The news articles literally say it. They're like the foie gras industry hit hard by HPAI. And so in 2020, when that first major outbreak that's now affecting mammals came about, over 30% was amplified because of the foie gras industry, literally. And so that has gone on to affect over 49 different mammal species in the United States. 100% of cases of HPAI in the US are from this European strain, according to the CDC. And it's jumped to 49 mammals, like I said, including polar bears. So we have grizzly bears, polar bears, minks, martens, like any animal you can think of out here with HPAI, bird flu. And right now, we can't afford an expansion of that industry. We already have the proof that they're an epicenter of production, an epicenter of amplification of HPAI. What I found in the studies, not only do they have that excessive amount of bodily waste, they also move them from warehouse to warehouse, from raising stage to fattening stage. And I found that the HPAI can survive on the feathers. So the scientists report that new strains exist in the fattening barns alone. The birds can shed the illness for 3 or more weeks, and they're asymptomatic carriers. Okay, so it doesn't, that's what I mean about doesn't affect them the same. They produce this virus and they're asymptomatic. So if you have a farm, 200,000 ducks, they could be infected and you don't know. So if somebody delivers supplies to your farm and then hits up 10 turkey farms after, all those turkey farms can be affected by this. And so sick birds can make it into the food system. That's why we found cats, domestic cats all over the United States infected with HPAI because they ate raw poultry, including duck. The sick birds are making it in the food system, so why wouldn't we think that they can make it into our food system, especially if it's from fat and waterfowl, especially if it's being served raw? That's foie gras. That's all foie gras. So it's implicated on both sides of this sector. And if you don't know much about HPAI, it's literally caused the culling of 500 million animals. Maybe even billion. Is it billion? Yeah, it must be billion because there's like 500 million mates. So it's just crazy. It's an average of over 25 million animals or something crazy a year is culled every single year to mitigate HPAI. So if we don't actually get to the root cause of what's making all these new strains of HPAI, we're never going to get ahead of it. And they're going to keep culling all the chickens and all the turkeys in order to like contain this virus because there's no understanding around it. Our government in the United States literally pays per animal that's killed to contain an HPAI outbreak. So if a farmer has 100,000 chickens, they can, well, I'll say egg-laying hens. If a farmer has 100,000 egg-laying hens, if they suspect there's HPAI, they can cull them all and then cash in $12 per chicken. And I've been watching this outbreaks over and over again. Counties are hit hard all at once. It's like some farms are hit multiple times. Like they'll have 1 million chickens affected, and then you'll see another 8 months later, 1 million chickens affected. 8 months later, 1 million chickens affected. So they're literally taking our tax dollars, our federal tax dollars, to pay them to horrifically kill these animals and then repopulate these animals without addressing any of the root cause. And so what's really important about that is that we can finger point this on the waterfowl. not to like demonize the waterfowl, but it's just that they are creating it. So we can address the most high risk type of poultry farming that there is with the waterfowl fattening. And so as soon as we get this evidence acknowledged, we can make a global impact, like I was saying earlier. In America, sorry, in the United States, it will be mostly precautionary. There's only 3 states that do waterfowl fattening farming, but we can take that evidence and kind of spread that to internationally, make an impact internationally.
Wow, wow, wow. So much knowledge that you have. Some of that I was thinking makes it feel like there's karma, like literally killing them is literally killing us. And I want to repeat what you said, just we're eating their stress. And it's science, folks. It's not woo-woo. We're literally eating their stress. It is science. And if ethics alone weren't reason enough for a ban, these health issues should scare the you know what out of everyone and make us rise up and stop this before it's too late, before people die and animals will of course are dying currently right at this moment. So I want to get into, because there's a question a little bit more about the process again of initiatives. But Carrie, is there anything on your that you want to share?
Regarding foie gras, I just wanted to reiterate when the force feeding happens, it's a quarter of their weight. So if you take a 200-pound person, it's like force feeding 25 pounds of food in a human 2 to 3 times a day for 2 to 3 weeks at a time. So it's super cruel, especially when organs are being punctured. In fact, it's not kosher. We learned that from one of the assemblymen. It's not kosher because organs are punctured when they're alive. So that's why it's not kosher. We learned that. Then I just wanted, the good news is that sometimes when these legislatures hear the details of this science, whether it's human threat, avian flu, and the cruelty, that like just the other day we had a Zoom call with an assemblyman in New Jersey, and at the end it was just a 50-minute call. We covered both topics, and at the end he said, well, those are 2 meals I will never order, and I'll co-sponsor both. So that made us feel like $1 million, because we do all this research and the slides and just make sure we have our ducks in a row, no pun intended. And he was delighted to sponsor both octopus prohibition and as well as preventing foie gras. So I just wanted to reiterate that facts do sell, so to speak, and yeah, evidence is what works.
Yeah, facts matter, and go New Jersey for a change. Yes. That's so good. That's making, maybe talk a little bit more on that. We have a question. Do you need to have face-to-face meetings with legislators, or email, phone calls, online meetings sufficient? Of course, I guess face-to-face is ideal if you can nail them down on the calendar and they let you in. And then I'm wondering, like, what is it like to step for the first time into the state capitol, into these government, they're sort of awe-inspiring, or they're designed to be these big hallowed halls, with lots of, stone and marble. At least that's how I think that they are. Do you get used to that? And what is it like, almost personally to be part of that process? Is it intimidating? Like, what is the response when you get in there, when, people are side by side with animal rights activists and they've gotten into this place where they've maybe never thought they would get to, actually in front of legislators? What do you want folks to know about that? And what has been the informal response to your presence there? Just your thoughts.
Yeah, great question. Because forget all that. COVID made that irrelevant. Like we do not deal with that anymore. The first year that we went out advocating, we did 8 meetings in person. Yes, it was scary. We were intimidated. We didn't know if we dressed nice enough. But we just, went in and we just were like, okay, well, we only have a couple minutes. So what bullet points do you want to know about? We did get a sponsor, but just forget all that. Everything's on Zoom. So if you're scared, it doesn't matter. You can just do it on Zoom. Most places will allow you to have just a Zoom call, super easy. I would say that it is so much more beneficial to be able to go in person. And we've done it all. Like we've gone in person, we've done hybrids. Even just this session, we had a couple hybrid events where one of our advocates went in person, and then I was there also on the computer to talk about the issues as well. And that was all great. But honestly, there were some jurisdictions that only wanted to meet us in person. So yeah, I'll just say in Florida, you know, only we couldn't really break through without a physical presence. So, you know, we've had to take a step and look at that and involve our advocacy in that arena. But in most places, I would say if you're afraid to go in person or think that that's going to be intimidating, just don't even worry about that, because you can do everything on Zoom. You can even testify on Zoom in most cases. And what's really great about being connected to the grassroots community is that there's advocates everywhere. And there's advocates everywhere that are going to be willing to help you. There's advocates everywhere that will help you. So other people would be able to go in person. I mean, in the accelerator program, one of them is based in Massachusetts, and I couldn't go. We had a hearing for one of our bills. I couldn't go. I'm in Hawaii, so it was a little bit harder for me to get there that day. But like 7 people went in person to testify on our different points, including Carrie, who's drove all the way there. Thank you. So just don't let the in-person fear hold you back, because you get a volunteer that will help, and it's also largely unnecessary now.
Yeah, in the world of Zoom. Carrie, anything you want to add to that?
Well, I've only been to the Massachusetts capital and of course Trenton, New Jersey. In Massachusetts, the room was more horizontal, so we were close to the legislators in the committee. And so that was more of an intimate setting. Whereas in Trenton, we're really far away from where their I should say oval desk is. So that was a little more intimidating in New Jersey. But then you go up and you have the mic and you have depending on how many testifiers there are at the committee hearing, you either have 30 seconds or you have 3 minutes, depending on how many are speaking or somewhere in between. And that was great experience, and it was relaxed. They had a couple questions based on our research. So it wasn't as intimidating as you would think. It was just the distance for me. I just have to get used to that distance of speaking far away from them. But as far as the feeling, you feel like $1,000,000 when you're finished, because if it does end up passing, think of all the millions of animals saved. Like in the octopus case, it's 1,000,000 octopuses a year.
Yeah, and what you said made me think that I would definitely recommend, if you are going to go in person to any of these things, that you give yourself a lot of time, because they are really big and it can be confusing to find that room, and you have to go through security, and there's a lot of people entering. So great point that, like, yeah, if you're going to go in there, of course, the first time you're not going to know what room to go to. And yeah, it's big. So give yourself plenty of time before the actual meeting that you need to.
Yeah, be prepared. That's what you guys are offering. You're really laying the groundwork so that it's less intimidating for people, and I think that's great. So I'm gonna give you a couple more questions, although we might wrap up in a bit here. So one is, I imagine that you get some pushback or questions that you're destroying people's livelihoods that come, right? Like, but you're going to take away these industries or these jobs, and it's going to destroy people's livelihoods. You know, what about that? Even though these industries are so dangerous and cruel and risky, but what do you say to that when that comes up, or what are the misconceptions around that?
Yeah, great question, because that's, that's come up a lot. And I think it's been a major theme for me this year is, as a movement, we really need to be focused on solutions, because like I said, the government people are focused on protecting the business. So you have to do everything you can to say that that person or industry is still going to make money or able to transition to something else without taking a financial hit. That's just for some reason how they're thinking. And so, like, for example, with the circus bill, so many circuses have already switched to animal-free performances. Barnum and Bailey, for example, ones that come to Washington, so that we were able to immediately just say, look, there's not going to be any economic impact. Obviously, if the circus still wants to come, they can just use acrobats. Like, they don't have to cancel the whole circus. They can still perform holograms, whatever. So we offered all these solutions. It was honestly so much about the solutions. For foie gras, we've got to have solutions that I honestly haven't come up with all the answers yet, but we do say that there's plant-based foie gras that are
Yeah.
widely available, so many different ones. There's even countries that are trying to do lab, like, cultivated foie gras. Japan, I saw already in restaurants. So definitely remember that there has to be a solution. That also just, sorry, brings to mind something else, because we just are dealing with this with our parrot bill. One of the mentees introduced a parrot bill that says you can't sell parrots in Massachusetts. And so it's come up like, oh, what about the people who are breeding them for conservation? So part of it is that parrots aren't indigenous to Massachusetts. So what we did is compiled a list of all the birds that are endangered in Massachusetts and say, look, there really is conservation effort that does need to happen, but not with parrots. So it's essentially irrelevant that if the people really were concerned with bird conservation, there's plenty of avenues that they can take part in that without profiting on the sale of intentionally bred parrots in Massachusetts. But I just think that that's come up all the time. I mean, we heard about that all last year with the Denver slaughterhouse, right? The livelihoods. It's harsh. We
Yeah.
just have to keep overcoming that obstacle and pointing to where the jobs will be instead, or how the business will be able to stay alive in some other way.
Pivot.
Yeah, exactly.
Pivot, that which is just normal, and it happened around COVID. Businesses pivoted. Change, folks, change. Cigarette industries used to be big, and now there's not as many jobs in those for a good reason. Pivoting. There used to be regular telephones and computers and calculators and things that don't exist as much, and people pivot, and create new industries. But yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the parrots, because somebody asked about that before, and I was going to try to swing back to that. And I saw that on your Instagram, right? That there's an initiative for exotic birds who get so unfairly treated, in that way. Carrie, anything you want to add? Because I have maybe just one or two more questions.
Just one point about the foie gras. In New Jersey, for example, there aren't any foie gras production farms. So the way that we would describe it to legislators is to say, well, actually would help New Jersey duck farms, because if we're not importing from other states the foie gras, it would help the local farmers. So that's a way to help industry for those legislators who are really concerned with industry and businesses and well-being and their livelihood. So it would help duck farms, even though as animal advocates we want to close all duck farms, like we had mentioned before, one step at a time. So we stop the foie gras and then hopefully eventually the duck farms. But at least for now, it would help local New Jersey businesses, because they'd have to be selling regular duck versus the force-fed imported foie gras.
Basically, what for the restaurants that will lose access to the force-fed products is that they can just alternatively source a non-force-fed product. And there's no force-feeding farms in New Jersey, so obviously the restaurants aren't really going to have an economic impact. They can just source the same products from a non-force-fed farm.
Oh, and isn't it 0.01% of restaurants even sell foie gras, something like that? It's super duper low. So let's focus on the 99%, of
Yeah.
those restaurants, of the menu items, so the restaurants affected versus the 0.1 blah 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 that they're trying to protect industries.
Excellent. Great, great perspective. And just to reiterate, offer solutions is the big tip that we're taking away from this, within your proposals. So I just wanted to ask you, as we're going to start to wrap up, about collaborations, which are essential. And I know we want to bring this movement together so this movement is more cohesive and works together more. You have a vast network of biodiversity and environment protection organizations, as well as grassroots animal rights activism groups like AAC you work with. Can you talk generally about how you go about collaborating effectively and strategically? And feel free to shout out any groups by name that you would like to.
Wow, sure. Yes. Obviously we collaborate with other groups a lot of times, especially because ARI was founded in Seattle, so we have our volunteers in Seattle. I'm in Hawaii, so we have, our base out here. We're established in New York. We have a lot of volunteers in office in New York, members in Florida. So we have different pathways, but we don't have every pathway. So sometimes it's beneficial for us to partner with another local organization that is also passionate about the same issue to help engage supporters with a kind of a new information. Like, for example, this last year we had a really great partnership with Farm Sanctuary. We're both working on foie gras, and even though they're already working on their own bill in Rhode Island, we partnered with them, collaborated in a way that we were able to offer a lot of evidence and lobby essentially for their bill because we already care about that issue, and create another level of like education and momentum and support in Rhode Island. And then, for example, in New York also, like I partner with Allie, Voters for Animal Rights. And so basically, we both want to do octopus farming. Honestly, it's our goal to do octopus farming in every single coastal state, every single island, every jurisdiction in the whole world that could potentially be targeted at. So with our partnership with Voters for Animal Rights, they've been working on legislation for a long time. They have really great connections. And so they know really good strategies in New York. And so they opened up pathways for us to deliver the information that we have. And really because of our partnership together, it really only took 2 meetings before we got a sponsor together. Like they booked the meetings with who they thought was best, presented the information, and then now we just lobby together for the issue. We have other organizations that want to support us too. And so in a lot of ways, the other orgs in engaging their supporters is the best thing that can be done. I have noticed that sometimes with certain, we all want to save the world and we all have a different way to do that, right? And so that's why I want to go back to what I said earlier in the call that we need to be all working parallel, kind of not work really interfering essentially with other welfarist or abolitionist campaigns. Obviously, if they hurt animals, obviously oppose that campaign. But if somebody is out in like Georgia and is running like a rodeo bill that only affects calves and you don't think that that's effective enough, that's fine because you have 49 other states you can run a better effective rodeo bill, but that person is already working on that bill in that state. So hopefully we're able to secure those protections for calves. We don't want to eliminate the pathway of success. We want to build on the pathways of success and recognize that, these campaigns evolve all the time. And so we might not all have the same strategies. And so I'm saying, if there's a jurisdiction that you want to run something in, it's already being done or whatever, you got a lot of other choices and a lot of other volunteers, plenty of cities, towns, everything that if the collaboration becomes difficult, that you don't have the same goals, it's totally fine. There's so many options that we really all can work in parallel. So while collaboration can be, it's just this really great outlet to the local communities. Like with my partnership with AAC, couldn't live without it, essentially. That or CAF, honestly, couldn't live without it because we need all the volunteers to do all the digital actions that will help all of our bills. And we need to be able to show that there's support in the jurisdictions. And so you have to be able to tap in to the grassroots community. And I am grassroots community. I'm still out there doing kind of grassroots like stuff that we're all wanting to do. So it's easy for me to be able to partner with the grassroots groups too and engage these kind of like front line advocates into doing something that we thought was inaccessible before.
Yeah.
That, ARI is basically like, we said, you don't need a degree, you don't need a law, you don't need anything. All you need is passion and evidence, and you can propose the solution to your problem. You just need a lot of people to agree. And we already know that y'all agree because you're vegan, and we already know you're against foie gras. We already know you're against fur. So we already know we have support for those issues, which is why we pursue those issues.
Nice. Yeah. All right. Well, so any other calls to action that you want to mention or announcements or what's next or where people can find other resources and your website again, or if somebody wants to collaborate with you, what should they do? Reach out, I
Yeah,
guess.
well,
Yeah, Amanda. Hmm?
yeah, definitely. If you have a bit like an idea, like If you want to join the mentorship, that's great. That's perfect. We have one more slot. We have one more VIP that we can definitely say we'll work with you for 4 bills. That would be excellent. And if you just want to learn along and watch along, obviously you can join the light level of that. But if you're also another organization that just wants help or advice about bills that you want to pursue, don't really want our ongoing long-term help, I'm happy to meet about that too. And we're really looking to establish partnerships in as many jurisdictions as possible to advance these issues. Because I don't really want to be doing foie gras forever, right? I don't want to be working on fur forever. Like we need to get to the next ones. Like we need to get to these next campaigns after fur. We can't be doing fur for 30 years. Like we need to be done with that, right? Like, so we need everybody that will be involved to be involved. So yes, we're trying to establish this in every jurisdiction. So please reach out.
Carrie,
Yeah,
anything?
there's some links in the chat. Trey uploaded some links to the chat to actions.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and honestly, like an easy way to engage actions that we have is on our Instagram. If you go to our link tree, I know not everybody has Instagram, but just our link in bio, our link tree has all our actions listed in there for every bill that we have that's active. And so if you follow us on Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, if you're friends with me on LinkedIn, then we try to post all of our actions that are there and try to get people to actually email the legislators that we're involved in to create this momentum. It's really important. And the bills wouldn't pass if we didn't have people do the actions. So just stress that every time that I'm like, hey, can you sign this? It's like so important. Okay. It's just so important.
Absolutely. Please, folks, please get active. Please do that. Good. Any other final words of hope and inspiration from either of you before we wrap up now?
Just get started. Get started. No reason to wait. The animals need us.
Yeah, that's a good sending point that like waiting's not our strategy. Like waiting for the perfect time to introduce a bill like is not the strategy. There's always going to be opposition. There's always going to be some federal campaign that's threatening to the validity of all of our other campaigns. Like we just need to keep moving forward because we're still generating evidence regardless of the political arena. We're still validating the evidence that the animals can and do feel joy and suffering, and they do feel pain, and that they are sentient beings. So everything that we can do to create evidence for that is what is needed to cause this paradigm shift of us letting go of the exploitation of animals.
Mm. Thank you for centering the animals as we close and reminding us of that they're suffering right now, and we want to do everything we can to end that suffering as fast as possible. So thank you both so much for being here. I really, 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 really appreciate your time. And I know that everybody who's watching this and will watch it in the replay will really appreciate all of this information. Hopefully they will reach out to you and get active. I do want to announce that the Rage Tour, RAGE, in collaboration with ICAW and CAFT, starts tomorrow. And that's a 25-day tour starting in Boston and going down the East Coast to Atlanta. Folks can RSVP for events at rage-tour.com. I'm sure we're putting that in the comments. So join up with activists on the East Coast, please. And for as little as $2 a month, please consider becoming a patron by finding AAC on Patreon. Your donations allow AAC to continue to provide free educational resources for activists, which ultimately saves more animals. If you're interested in becoming a mentor or a mentee or want to get involved, please visit our website. Please hit subscribe here on our channel and give us a like. Okay, folks, please continue to call attention to the fundamental truth. Animals are sentient beings, not products, property, or resources. They are why this work matters so deeply. Until next time, stay strong, get active, and live vegan. AAC signing off. Bye, y'all.
Thank you. Bye bye.